Welcome to My Safety Training Online presents Hazards Communications 2012, the new law. What this safety program will present. We'll discuss the new pictographs and their labeling, new employee training requirements, the new safety data sheets examples and its components, the new HCS definitions, and an explanation of what hasn't changed in the new law. Part 1, Pictographs and their meanings. Okay, here we can see our first pictograph, which covers flammables, pyrophorics, self-healing, flammable gases, self-reactives, and organic peroxides. Here we can see the symbol for explosives, self-reactives, and organic peroxides. Here is the symbol for gases under pressure. Here is the pictograph for skin corrosion, burns, eye damage, and corrosive to metals. The symbol for oxidizers is shown here in this pictograph. In this slide, we see the symbol for acute toxicity, fatal or toxic. The symbol for health hazard, depicting carcinogens, mutagenicity, reproductive toxicity, respiratory sensitizer, a target organ toxicity, and aspirations toxicity is shown here. The pictograph, which is the exclamation mark, a new symbol just introduced with this standard, means an irritant, a skin sensitizer, acute toxicity, narcotic effects, a respiratory tract irritant, and is hazardous to the ozone layer. Part 2, HCS 2012 Employee Training under the new law. Components of employee training. The three ways of educating the worker: labels, training, and safety data sheets. All three components must be readily available to the OSHA representative, employees, or independent contractors. Multiple location businesses must have a copy of each location where the substances are present. Employers shall provide effective information and training on hazardous chemicals. Your supervisor or HR, human resources person, is best suited if the safety officer is not available. This training will cover your work area on your initial assignment and whenever a new chemical hazard is introduced that the employee has not encountered previously. Chemical-specific information must always be available through labels and safety data sheets. Training should cover all categories of hazards, covering areas of toxicity, labeling, etc. Minimum training calls for the following. Number 1, methods and observations that may be used to detect the presence or release of hazardous chemicals. Number 2, the physical, health, and simple asphyxiation, combustible dust, and pyrophoric hazards, as well as hazards not otherwise classified. Number 3, measures that the company employees can take to protect themselves from these hazards, including specific procedures that the company has taken to protect the worker. Part 3, the new safety data sheet infos and existing information. The safety data sheet product identifier. This calls for a product identifier in the label along with other means of identification. It is recommended for the use of substance and restrictions. It calls for the name, address, telephone number of the manufacturer, importer, or other responsible party, as well as an emergency number if it's available. The new safety data sheet calls for, when a mixture is not classified, a statement must be made to that effect. It calls for the classification of the substance according to 1910-1200. It uses a signal word, a hazard statement, a symbol, or precautionary statement will be provided. This will include an ingredient where unknown toxicity is used in a mixture of greater than 1%. Substances must have a chemical name, a common name, synonyms, a CAS number, or other unique identifiers. They will list impurities and stabilizing additives. The previous requirements, plus a chemical name and the concentration of all ingredients which are classified as health hazards, should be in a composite information on mixtures section. The safety data sheet must state that they present a health risk below the cutoff or concentration limit. The exact amount should be stated unless it is a trade secret. The standard calls for a description of necessary measures subdivided into different routes of exposure, such as inhalation, skin and eye contact, and ingestion. Firefighting measures must have a suitable and unsuitable extinguishing media defined. Specific hazards arising from the chemical defined. Personal precautions are redefined, protective equipment is required, and emergency procedures are detailed. Methods and materials for containment and cleaning are also on the SDS. Handling and storage of regulated substances. Precautions for safe handling are redefined depending on the types and amount of substance that is regulated. Exposures, controls, and personal protection. The PEL, or Personal Exposure Limit, or TLV, threshold limit value have been redefined for certain substances, and appropriate engineering controls have been mandated. In some situations, we will find that exposure controls and personal protective equipment have been mandated, along with appropriate engineering controls whenever necessary. Stability and reactivity issues, chemical stability issues, the possibility of hazardous reactions, conditions to avoid incompatible materials, and hazardous decomposition products are discussed in the physical hazards section. The ecological information is non-mandatory, but discusses ecotoxicity, degradability, bioaccumulative potential, and the mobility in the soil. Disposal considerations on the SDS plus transport information with the UN number and special precautions are discussed in the disposal considerations and transportation section. Transportation information should include the UN shipping name, the hazard class, packing group, environmental hazards, and bulk transport information. The new HCS 2012 definitions. A chemical means any substance or mixture of substances. Classifications mean to identify the relevant data regarding the hazards of a chemical, review the data, and decide if it's hazardous. Classification for health and physical hazards includes determination of the degree of hazard by comparing the data of health and physical hazards. Hazard category means a division of criteria within each hazard class. The hazard class means the nature of the physical or health hazard. A hazard not otherwise classified, or HNOC, means an adverse physical or health effect identified through the evaluation of scientific evidence. A hazard statement means a statement assigned to a hazard class or category that describes the nature of the hazard of a chemical, including the appropriate degree of hazard. A hazardous chemical means any chemical that is classified as a physical hazard, a simple asphyxiant, a combustible dust or pyrophoric gas, or hazard not otherwise classified. A health hazard means a chemical which has been classified as according to the hazardous effects of acute toxicity, skin corrosion, irritant, or serious eye damage. The label means the appropriate group of written, printed, or graphic information elements concerning the hazardous chemical that is affixed to printed or attached container document information. A label element means the specified pictograph, hazard statement, signal word, and precautionary statements for each hazard class and category. Mixture means a combination or solution composed of two or more substances in which they do not react. Physical hazard means a chemical that is classified as posing as one of the hazardous effects of explosive, flammable, oxidizers, pyrophoric, corrosive, self-heating, gas under pressure, or in contact with water emits hazards. Pictogram means a composition that may include a symbol plus other graphic elements with a border or background. Precautionary statement means a phrase that describes the recommended measures that should be taken to minimize, prevent adverse effects resulting from exposure to a hazardous chemical or improper storage and handling. Pyrophoric gas means a chemical in a gaseous state that will unite spontaneously in air at temperatures of 130 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Safety data sheet means a written or printed material containing hazardous chemicals that is prepared in accordance with UN specifications. Signal word means a word used to indicate the relative level of severity of a hazard and alert the reader to a potential hazard on the label. Simple asphyxiant means a substance or mixture that displaces oxygen in the ambient atmosphere and can cause oxygen deprivation in those exposed to, leading to unconsciousness and possibly death. Substance means a chemical element and their compounds in a natural state or obtained by any production process, including additive necessary to preserve the stability of the product and impurities from the process used. Part 5. Parts of HCS 2012 that are the same as HCS 1994. Labels on shipped containers. The chemical manufacturer, importer, or distributor shall ensure that each container of hazardous chemicals in the workplace is labeled, tagged, and marked. Manufacturers, distributors need to know this. Where the chemical manufacturer or importer is required to label, tag, or mark the following information: product identifier, signal word, hazard statement, pictographs, precautionary statement, and the name, address, and telephone number of the manufacturer or distributor is required. HCS 12 labeling requirements require that every worker know where the safety data sheets are, as well as what the proper requirements are for labeling. Every label on the primary and secondary containers should contain the following elements: the specified pictogram, a hazard statement, signal word, and precautionary statement. Substances are mixtures that are labeled as to what percentage of the substances are mixed. HCS 2012, as HCS 1994, still calls for engineering to be the highest priority, then administrative, and then personal protective equipment. HAZCOM Safety Summary. The new standard calls for tougher labeling requirements, new pictographs for various substance properties, as well as new definitions for words such as chemicals or relabeling of safety data sheets. The new hazard category and class have been introduced into the safety data sheets. Non-mandatory environmental requirements are now on the new SDSs. The physical hazards and product identifier requirements for the safety data sheets have been strengthened. A new classification for health and physical hazards, including the determination of the degree of hazard by comparing the data of health and physical hazards. This new section will meet UN specifications. The new HCS standards makes allowances for trade sequences and substances on the SDS. The purpose and objective of HAZCOM have not changed, only the methodology for implementing those activities has. A hazard statement means a statement assigned to a hazard class or category that describes the nature of the hazard of a chemical, including where the appropriate degree of hazard is. A precautionary statement means a phrase which describes recommended measures that should be taken to minimize, prevent adverse effects resulting from the exposure to a hazardous chemical or improper storage handling.